I'd like to call to order the October 1st, 2024 meeting of the Kingston Planning Board. It is 6:45 p.m. This is a workshop meeting, just going over board business. And I guess we're going to start with the call to order and the roll call. To my left is Board Member Robert Tosolo, Board Member Peter Coffin. I'm Lynn Merrill, I'm the chair. We have Land Use Administrator Robin Carter, Select Board Rep Ellie Alessio. Robin Duguay will be joining us shortly. She's Vice Chair of the Board, and our Town Planner, Glenn Greenwood. So we do have a quorum, so before Robin gets here, can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the August 20th, 2024 meeting? Second? Okay, any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Okay, item number 1 is done. Just grab a pen so I can keep up. Okay. I'm going to skip ahead to correspondence. Take care of the routine stuff first. We have a bill from the Rockingham Planning Commission for our land use regulation handbooks and the ebook combo for $196. Is everyone in favor of paying that?
Yes.
Okay.
They're not in yet. They usually tell me when they're in. That's just the invoice. Yes.
Yeah. So the dues for the Rockingham Planning Commission for our membership for the next year were paid by the Board of Selectmen at their last meeting. We have a bill from Civil Construction Management for the professional services to date in review of the application for 6 Granite Way, the site plan that was conducted there, for $367.50. Are we all in favor of paying that?
Yep.
Okay. We have a bill from Civil Construction Management for the professional services for the Eaton Nason Subdivision Engineering Review for $570. We all in favor of paying that one? Okay. We have a bill for professional services for the CJ&J site plan, the engineering review for the property at 83 Route 125 for $832.50. We all in favor of paying that one? Okay. We also have a request for releasing the escrow for Berkshire Dominion Holdings, which is Saddle-Up property. We have $250 remaining in their escrow account.
It's just for the time change, and for the change of the items.
Yeah.
And it'd be minus any professional review.
Yeah. Okay, minus any professional review from that. Are we all in favor of releasing the escrow?
Is that with my take off?
That's yours. No, it would come off this.
Almost all.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pennies left.
Well, we did have Dennis review that one, but I took most of it. I didn't take it. It goes to the town. It goes back to the town general fund. But
Okay. Perfect.
Do you need to do anything with this or no?
I don't think so.
I thought so.
Yes. It's now nighttime.
no, I meant in the
That was on, it just shut up.
Yeah.
The screen.
I thought maybe I was dying.
Yeah. There you go.
It's
And there it is.
only the good go. So don't.
It just seemed like it just got darker.
Just flashed before
Okay.
you.
All right.
You're looking better already.
So we do have 2 letters that came in. The first one is from Stephanie Boole, who lives in East Hampstead, abutting the property where the new Verizon cell phone tower is being built. The daily construction is starting before 7 a.m. and is extremely disruptive to her household. We would like this addressed immediately. As tax-paying citizens, we deserve the right to this courtesy. Please let me know ASAP. Is that a referral to
That would have to go to
the BOS?
the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
Did we have any restrictions on their hours of operation?
I don't think any construction in town starts before 7, does it?
I think there is a general ordinance, but they may not be aware of it.
That's what they would have to be aware of.
Yeah.
Because This 7 PM, I'm pretty sure somebody must have told her.
7 a.m.
I mean, 7 AM
Yeah.
is our start time.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it is their start time, but if they start 5 minutes already, it's,
Yeah.
you know, it's kind of my word.
Could you pass that to Ellie, please, so she can remember to give it to the Board of Selectmen? And then we have something from Anthony Alexandra of 34 Church Street, Kingston, New Hampshire. Dear members of the Kingston Planning Board, I hope this letter finds you well. I'm writing to respectfully request permission for a project I plan to undertake on my property located at 34 Church Street, which I believe is the Church Street Station property. I believe this project will contribute positively to the community and align with the town's development goals. The project involves providing affordable storage solutions, including parking for equipment, boats, and other items that residents may not have space for on their properties. These storage containers are portable structures designed to be easily moved and not permanently affixed to the ground. They will be added as needed to accommodate demand. I kindly request the opportunity to present my project in more detail at an upcoming planning board meeting. Please let me know if there are any forms or additional information required from my side. Thank you for considering my request. I look forward to working collaboratively with you to ensure that this project aligns with the community's goals and standards. Do we need a site plan review, or do we need a...
Yeah, I think so.
I've spoken with this gentleman a couple of times, and there's an old site plan that had a number of approved storage buildings to be placed out back there, but that never got improved, never got substantially improved, and so that site plan doesn't hold water anymore.
It was done in 1989.
It's been a long time.
But they had some storage back there.
They do.
They do, and what he's conveying is that he would like to do, he didn't say a clear cut, but he wants to take down a lot of trees.
The trees bordering the cemetery.
There is an issue on that property with the amount of coverage because of the zone it's in, impervious coverage. So that would certainly have to be reviewed.
Yeah, and although what he's saying here doesn't constitute a permanent structure like a building, if it's really successful, there could end up being just a ton of storage containers out there.
Well,
So
but they're
I
also,
think we should go forward without a site plan.
they're also talking about boats and
Yeah,
automobiles and all of that, and putting that on grass and all of that. I would,
The aquifer protection, so I don't.
yeah, aquifer protection, I guess we really need to take a look at that.
so, I mean, I would feel most comfortable if we inform him that a full site plan is required.
And screening from the
I've
neighbors.
gone down the road with him, he knows that that's a significant cost. But he seems very earnest in his questions, but he has a definite goal for the property, and it will be pretty developed.
Yeah, when you look at this
Yeah.
original
If it works out the
plan,
way he wants it to.
there is an incredible amount of impervious space.
This is the same property where we had a dog grooming, like just recently come into.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we
And-
see.
and they were gonna use that area back there.
Periodically, the units
You change hands.
change hands.
Yeah, they
We
wanted to use
see
the
them.
backyard, the daycare center wanted to use the backyard.
That's right, they just, that's the one.
I think both of them, I think we need, I guess we need a
Put the
site
kids and
plan.
dogs out there together and let them play. That'd be great for both.
Great, but I don't know about the, but they can't, they should be, they're cutting the land to put this down to the,
Well, they have a right to timber their property.
they do.
But if the direction here is a formal site review, I will get back in touch with him so that we can talk about what that means.
And they can timber the property, but now the regulations require a 50-foot buffer.
Exactly, and I'd like to inform him that he really should keep those buffer areas in place, because it will just cost him
Yeah, before he
more money
cuts them.
to replace them.
Is the buffer zone greater? Is the buffer zone greater in the aquifer zone?
No, it's based on the residential use
Right, it's based on-
adjacent.
Use.
What abuts the property,
Yeah, so it's all use.
yeah. So, I mean, he seems very earnest, he seems very, desirous of doing the right thing. But it's not gonna be cheap, and I just wanna have that conversation with him.
Yeah, I think we need to advise him of what some of the rules and regs are.
Yeah, and it's gonna, and I told him, if this was the case, that it will be a timing issue for him too, because he'll have to secure some professionals that are pretty traditionally busy these days, so.
Okay, well, I guess you have our advice on.
But he has,
moving forward with
and
that.
he's, God bless him, he's been in several times.
That's good. Somebody's really trying to follow the rules.
He has been in
Which is
several
nice.
times, yes, yes.
Mm-hmm, it
He
is.
seems like a very earnest person.
So I got a phone call, changing the subject, from our town finance director, and it appears that the budget committee would like a copy of the CIP plan, the completed CIP plan. So where is that sitting?
I was just talking with Ellie. I have everything from everyone except from Phil. And he's about 40% of the CIP, because he's building and grounds and he's Department of Highway. We met last Monday, because he knew that I needed it. And he did tell me he'd get it to me on Friday.
And you didn't.
He didn't.
Well,
But I'll touch base with him on Thursday.
and just let him know that we're moving forward without him.
Well,
There is a plan, and there's quite a, I've seen.
But the plan is old.
right, a lot of what he will do is shift the years on the projects that he is proposing.
The first year is 2025, and it had a lot of stuff.
Yeah, he would have to shift those.
Okay, got
He
it.
would have to shift those.
Because I was shocked when I saw how much was. for-
Yeah, and he put those in, he put those in last year expecting he would do a lot of PR work this year, which I think did not get accomplished.
So I think maybe what you need to do is move forward with everything else. So
I
it's
can
all
act-
done except for that?
I can put the spreadsheet together
Okay.
so that the budget committee can have it
And you need to have a meeting with your
beginning of next
CIP.
week. Yeah, for them to look at.
Yeah.
But then we do need to have the CIP committee look at it.
So we can approve it.
There
Hopefully
weren't a
at our
lot of
next
new
meeting.
There weren't a lot of new submissions at all,
Okay,
which is good, manageable.
okay.
But
Then I'll share that with the budget committee.
Please do.
Tomorrow night.
please.
Yeah.
We're up tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night, there's zoning, planning, and rec and parks, which is the only organization of the four that looks like it would have capital projects. And I don't know if Paul left you anything for rec and parks, but,
He got in touch with me to tell me that he had no
Okay.
new projects.
so basically, none of the four people are up to tomorrow have any capital improvements,
But I think they wanted
but
to.
they want to get it
They want
because
to
they
get
want
it.
to,
And they should have it.
They should.
they want to know what they're working with.
Certainly. So I will close the gap with Phil and put it together.
Okay. And just let him know, we're just gonna finish everything else and leave his as is.
Yeah.
And if he wants, then it's up to the budget committee to make changes after. I mean, that's all we can do. Decisions have consequences. Okay.
Yes.
And the other thing I need for the budget committee, Bill.
Paula came
You're 3
talk.
months behind.
And I was doing so well this year.
You were doing very well, but
I
now
was
you're 3
doing
months
so
behind.
well.
So it's making us look like,
I don't want to take you out of the woods, really.
It stayed ahead of the game, and then I did.
okay. So the next thing, and last thing on our agenda is the zoning ordinances. So some of those have to do with housing and regulations and that sort of thing. So I wanted to share with you a quick synopsis, because I don't want to spend, I don't want to take up time with research and whatever. We did give you a copy of the article that was in the paper about denser housing producing smaller school costs, and there is a less than 3-minute video on that. Let me see if I can get it up. Wait a minute. Go. The link was on here earlier today, I believe.
Is it the one we looked at yesterday?
No, this is the second one. This one was done by New Hampshire Housing. Oh, gosh. Okay, not there, I'll find it. The second one is the one that was done in, I think, 2019 by, it was paid for by the Realtors, and it was done by UNH. Okay. See if we can get this, well. Let me put my speaker up all the way. Oh, it's not working.
Is that the video?
Yeah, Adam?
Your speaker setting must be not set to that.
Is there Wi-Fi next to the system?
Can you set my speaker setting for that? What? Let's stop it, okay.
Let's try something. Oh. Hang on.
Wasn't me. Pardon?
Okay, that turns out. Try now.
There was a little pop-up that came up on the right from Google.
Okay. All right, let me take a look. Sorry.
Right there. Speakers.
Yep, that's why it's going to. So apparently I have speakers on that, which I never realized.
Okay.
If a town allows for more housing,
Okay.
school-age kids will follow, and educating those kids means property taxpayers will pay more.
So we'll start from the beginning.
It's a familiar concern heard throughout New Hampshire. If a town allows for more housing, school-age kids will follow, and educating those kids means property taxpayers will pay more. But is it really true? Do additional school-age kids actually lead to property tax increases? The question is critical to New Hampshire policymakers at the local and state level because a reluctance to educate more children is likely leading to the state's growing housing affordability crisis.
It seems to be believed, at least in some circles across the state, that if you build more housing in a town, and that brings families with children into town, the additional school enrollment will raise local property taxes. That belief, I think, is an impediment to building more housing, more affordable housing for younger families across New Hampshire.
Professor Richard England, former professor of economics at the Peter T. Paul School of Business at UNH, reviewed school enrollment data and education property tax rates from over 200 New Hampshire cities and towns in an attempt to determine if more kids in town inevitably leads to higher property taxes.
My research found that it simply isn't true. One cannot say that if you bring more children into town and they enter the public schools, that the property tax will go up. It simply isn't supported by the data or by logic. The school administration costs could stay roughly the same. Does debt service on the bonds that were issued in past years go up? No, the cost of debt service stays the same. If enrollment goes up, not all parts of the cost side of the budget go up in proportion. Do even transportation costs go up? School transportation costs? Probably not, because there often are empty seats on school buses. And if you have more enrollment, you just put more kids on the existing buses. So it's not the case that if more kids come to town, that the costs go up by the average cost of educating the kids who are already in the district.
In virtually every community across the state, the number of students enrolled in public schools has been steadily declining. In fact, prior to the pandemic, of the state's 234 municipalities, only 29 communities experienced growth in school enrollment in the previous decade, while more than 200 saw school enrollment decline. So as school enrollment has decreased, have property taxes in towns dropped? In fact, the opposite has been true in many cases, as towns have seen a steady increase in tax rates, even as school populations have declined.
If you look at the decade just before the onset of COVID and what's happened to class sizes, what you find is that in a large majority of school districts across the state, class size declined. What you find when you do that data analysis is that there's almost no correlation at all between enrollment percentage changes in enrollment and changes in the school tax rate. Yes, there are examples of communities where enrollment went up over a 10-year period and the school tax rate went up. But there are also plenty of examples of communities where enrollment went down and the school tax rate went up.
Of the 11 largest school districts in the state, Dover, for instance, saw substantial growth in its student population, yet had a smaller increase in its school tax rate than 6 of the largest districts with declining student enrollments. This provides some preliminary evidence that student enrollment is not the primary driver of the local tax rate for public schools. The largest increase in school tax rate came in Salem, a town that experienced a nearly 20% decline in the number of elementary students during the decade. In fact, only 7 communities in New Hampshire experienced both a decreased school enrollment and a lower school tax rate, and many communities which saw the largest drop in students also experienced the largest increase in their school taxes.
The issue of construction of workforce housing and the impact on the tax rate is an important one, and I can understand why many town officials and town residents are asking this question. But I think we have to look into the data. We can't just assume that if we enroll more kids in the schools that the tax rates will go up. And to assume that is to guarantee that we're going to continue to have a housing affordability problem in New Hampshire.
So what are the long-term implications for a town and a state with fewer kids? After all, working-age people generally have school-age children. If the public policy position of a municipality is to keep children out of its community by limiting the housing supply, it should logically mean that it will also have fewer working-age residents. Without those workers, employers will not have the employees to expand and help to grow New Hampshire's economy.
So we found that interesting.
Amazon hates this, but there's
You don't care
nothing they
about
can do to
Amazon?
stop it. There's a new electric lighter out there, and it's got...
Okay. The other thing was the newest New Hampshire Housing Authority study that was just in the paper, and I gave everybody a copy of the article, and it talks about the fact that denser housing produces smaller school costs. So the denser the housing is, the smaller it is, and let me just see if I can grab that 2.5-minute video that was out there.
If you want to see what the denser housing looks like, well, you probably know anyways, go up to Portsmouth on Route 1. I'm amazed at how many clusters of duplex apartments it looks like. I'm not even sure. It's quite a bit.
There's an awful lot of things when you start correlating schools, tax rates, and housing, and I think I've expressed it, my biggest problem is define workforce housing for me, define low-income housing for me, define how you're gonna bring that into, because, again, I look at it every day.
Yeah.
Workforce housing, low-income housing is basically housing that you have a voucher moving into. That doesn't make it affordable for anybody in your community, so that's one part. Schools, and I have lots of children, if you don't know, I have many, and I've seen, my oldest is 30, my youngest is 6, and I've seen the changes. My wife is a teacher, and the driver, from my perspective, is the programs that they keep changing in the schools. One prime example, as far as tax rates go, is 10 to 20 years ago, if your child had a problem in school, you would meet with the teacher, you'd meet with a vice principal, and then you would solve the problem and that would be done. Recently, one of my children was called in for an IEP because of the new English program that they have installed in the school. It's not the old English that you know, it's not the old English I know, and it's kind of like workforce housing. You've just changed the name of low-income housing and you call it workforce. In schools, the new English doesn't have adverbs, doesn't have pronouns, doesn't have paragraphs. They've changed the whole system, and the teachers are having a problem with it. And then the children are having a problem with it, which comes to the IEP. They called me into school for an IEP. I sat with a psychologist who was on a Zoom call that they were paying $150 an hour. I sat with the teacher, the administrator, the vice principal, and then a adjustment coordinator. None of that ever existed in the past. And now that exists in the new model. They've had 5 different math programs with they're trying to, new math, Common Core was one of them. They've now are 3 steps past Common Core. When I see schools and costs, it's not because you have more children, and again, like, I agree with that, man, it's common sense. You're a teacher, you have 16 kids. Well, 4 more kids come into your class, does it cost more? No. Well, where's the cost coming from? These programs are starting to get out of hand. They're starting to get insane. And they're mandated, unfortunately, by the federal government. So you have to do this program. I don't see, I mean, I went to I had a closing at the Boston Public Schools one day. And it was the Boston Public Schools Central building. And I went and they were having a big seminar, and I just had to meet with one of the administrators to do a refinance. But they gave me a name tag and invited me to lunch, so I went. And they had a graph of the cost to educate one child is $4,000. The cost to educate something else, and by that I mean, like, now they have ELL, I don't know if you're familiar, okay? English learning student. You're having that program now with the migrants coming in. So, and I love migrants, I love when they come in, you know what I mean, the different problems they have with that, but what they're doing is they're dropping off a child in a school. Lynn is getting killed by it. They had 385 students that don't speak English, and they just drop them off to school. It's up to the school to make that work. Well, how does that work? You got 15 different new programs. Lawrence is doing right, but you know, a lot of the other schools. That hits our town, now what do? Those are the costs that are driving up tax school rates. It's not a student, and it's not a housing, but I mean, again, housing's a totally different problem. I personally don't feel that if you're looking to lower housing costs, you have to look at your town, you have to understand where you're gonna go, and you have a choice of going the way of Cambridge and filling every inch up with housing, or you go the way of Boxford, Massachusetts, where we're just gonna sit back and we don't want any, we're gonna keep our 2-acre minimums, and we're gonna just keep that, and the tax rate's gonna go up because your growth is 2.5%. You must see that at the select board. The costs are gonna go up for every single thing. So how do you mitigate that? More tax base? You can grow the base, or you gotta grow the rate. And that's where I see that. When they start mixing these things, I'm hesitant of New Hampshire housing. I'm hesitant of anyone that comes in and starts, you know, throwing out new terms of Workforce housing. Well, what did you call it last week, and why are you changing the name? It bugs me. It bugs me a lot.
Well, there is a seminar, I think it's by New Hampshire Housing, that is being done in about 2 weeks, I think, and New Hampshire has a definition of affordable housing, and it has a definition of workforce housing. Workforce housing has nothing to do with subsidies. It has absolutely nothing to do with subsidies. It is for people that are making 60% of the median income of the area. They have to be able, if they're making 60% of the median, they have to have a house that can be afforded by people that are making 60% of the median income of that community. So they're working people that, you know, it has nothing to do with Section 8, has nothing to do with affordable housing. It has to do with workforce. So these are working people that just, the housing has gone too far, it's too expensive, so they don't have a place to live.
Who's going to build that and take the loss? Is my question. I mean, if you're gonna build a house, am I gonna build a house and I'm gonna sell it to you for $200,000 so I'll work for a housing can afford it? Well, no. What happens then?
It's happening in Exeter.
It's happening
And it's
in
happening
Exeter,
in some
but
other communities, but I'm just saying, you know.
let me explain how that's happening. How that's happening is, it's not a voucher there, but it's a grant. I'm gonna, and I see it, and again, I see it because I do the paperwork on it and I do the closings on it. The federal government are gonna give you
No,
$2.4 million to build those, and then you have to rent those to people that can afford them at a lower rate. So the rent is $2,200, but you have to rent them for $1,000.
these aren't rentals. These are purchases.
Who builds those? Do you know anybody that builds those?
They're building them in Manchester, and the people out of Massachusetts that are doing it. But they're not rentals, they are indeed purchased
Joe
homes.
Falzone has built those.
Yeah, he has,
He built them in Brentwood.
yeah. He did build the nice ones in Brentwood.
Autumn Lane and Balsam Drive in Brentwood are a workforce housing development.
Yep.
Now, it's not easy, because the major price factor in southeastern New Hampshire is the land cost. It's not a hard equation. With housing, if you want to overcome the land cost, the only way to do it is through density. That's the only way. You have to not have every lot require 3 acres of land. It's the only way.
It's 6 houses on 3 acres.
Right, and so the whole idea is to build density, so the cost of the housing can come down, and then it's specifically affordable for people that are working. You know, your firefighter who's only making, you know, and who's married to the nurse or the school teacher, and, you know, they're only making $80,000 and our median income isn't there, so they can't afford to buy in our community. And that's what this is all about. It's not about vouchers, it's not about grants.
And the workforce housing definition in New Hampshire has been in place since 2009. So it's been in place for 16 years.
And for the units that are for sale, I just showed them that workforce housing, 100% of the median, it has to be affordable to 100% of the median income for a family of 4. To rent, 60%, which is what Lynn had pointed out, for the of the median income is what they're capped at. So it's really workforce, and people who've got jobs. It's not voucher.
These are people that are working, that are purchasing the home.
I love the idea.
And that's what workforce housing is in New Hampshire.
How do you make that happen when?
Density.
All right, my other
And
thing.
so here's the thing, that density, the article that we submitted to everybody was, the new study was that density produces smaller school costs. So.
Let me just expand on that a little bit. Because we're here in New Hampshire, and you want to go density, what are you doing with water and sewer? Okay?
Now, there's a capital.
It's community.
And again, it's a bigger picture of that. And I love the idea of quarter-acre lots and build a house.
But we're doing that right now with our over 55.
We are, and
Nothing for our schools. That's
Right.
or community.
No, but I'm just saying that we are achieving the water and sewer with our over 55 housing and the density there.
Right, and just barely at the Sanborn Seminary property, obviously, that was the hold up there. But you get to a point at which you may decide that a village district with higher density zoning, you need to have a community septic system, the way Epping does, or something like that. It doesn't mean you're gonna turn it into Epping.
We're gonna have to go there as a community, especially with the aquifer system that we have. We have some of the best water in the state of New Hampshire, just can't get to it. And to put in that infrastructure, the piping and millions of dollars.
But that, they've got super grants for that right now.
Oh, not super enough.
But
It's my guess.
seriously, they do have them.
Do you want to be Epping? And Kingston has to make that choice. Do you want to be Epping, or do you want to stay Kingston and absorb those costs
Yeah.
of taxes rising? And
That's a legitimate question.
Yeah,
That's a legitimate question, absolutely.
we have 25% of our land in conservation. We do that for a reason. We love having that natural surroundings that we love so much and enjoy. Our income in Rockingham County, we have one of the highest median incomes in Rockingham County. It's a different place here. We're more like Wyndham than we are Epping, quite frankly.
And you can put water and sewer in and not turn it into an Epping. You know, like North Salem,
Yes and no.
like North Salem, and Atkinson, and Plastow.
you start taking grant money. And
Yes.
once you take that grant money, it is going to open the door to something you may or may not want, because that's how it starts.
Well, it
And then-
started with the fact that Plastow didn't have enough water. So where are they getting their water from?
Manchester.
From Manchester, because of all the grants. So it's coming down to Salem, because Salem needed more money for the Tuscan Village. So Salem's getting the water there, and now they have the offshoot going into Wyndham, and now we've got, and then they did the shoot into Plastow to cover that portion. So instead of going to like under Granite Fields, where we've got all kinds of aquifers and water, and buying the water from Kingston, they're buying the water from Manchester, and coming all that way. And they had state grants to cover it, but it didn't expand the housing.
One of the other problems I see, where I'm currently doing a development, okay, and we've been doing a little let's make a deal with the town, so it's been delayed 2 years. When we started 2 years ago, our costs were very different than where they are now. Okay, we woke up July 1st to we now need HERS reports. Okay,
What reports?
HERS. It's that we have to hire a guy to come in and tell us if we're buying. And that has added $3,000 a unit to our costs.
That's a lot.
Sprinklers, okay, are now mandated, solar hookups are now need to be wired. And again, this has all changed over the last couple of years, and we didn't join the compact, thank God. New Hampshire did not, like Massachusetts did. But again, that stuff is coming from the federal government through their housing into your town, and we're probably $30,000 more a unit than we would have been 3 years ago.
But this money isn't coming from the feds.
The money isn't, but the regulations are.
Well, in New Hampshire, there's a law against mandating sprinklers in any home that is 4 units or less.
Until they find a
Mandated
way.
stuff is gone. No, we have mandated stuff all the time.
No, but the sprinklers are, that's mandated that you cannot do that.
When you look at work for a housing or someone that wants to build a house cheap, regulations do play a big part.
Oh, they do, they're huge, they're
And
huge.
it's something we just may want to keep an eye on coming in.
Well, it's, for example, the state of New Hampshire did not put into law the latest building codes, because the building codes required a solar automobile charger in every house. And they felt that, New Hampshire felt,
mandated?
no, we're not going to do that, because not everybody wants to have that kind of a car in their house. Why should they have to pay the money to have the, if they want to have an electric car, and they want to have the charger, they can.
The feds don't even have this money. They're just printing it out because they have paper,
It's not so much
which is
the money,
ridiculous.
You're right.
It's the mandate that
We can't get a house approved.
That house is gonna cost me $30,000 more to build,
Yeah.
which means I have to raise that price $30,000 more. And then you start looking at different tax rates and different things like that. Building a house is getting more and more expensive. And how do you keep that cost down to create workforce housing?
Yeah. And it's a struggle throughout the entire state. But I just wanted to just do the correlation that children and that sort of thing, there's no correlation there according to the latest research. And that was the only thing.
I don't buy that.
I do the quick math in my head that, you know, like I said, you're a teacher, you got 16, 17 gonna cost you more, is it gonna cost the town more?
Not anymore.
The problem comes when you reach the maximum, and I think that's how we've gotten ourselves into troubles, that we didn't foresee the slacking off coming. When the new high school was built, the projection was for an increase to be occurring, so much so that they left space to add on to the new high school, thinking that was probably going to have to happen within 10 years of the high school being built. But what really happened is we got in there, and even before Fremont backing out and all that kind of consideration, the population started dropping down, and people were having fewer kids and delaying it and whatever else, so that the school enrollment was dropping down. Well, you have a certain number of programs that you have to maintain, and what happens is the class sizes, which had gotten to the point where they had reached their maximum, whatever, 30 or whatever it was, and so they're having to add more teachers to meet that. When it stopped dropping down, they reduced the class sizes, and then they had reduced positions, and so they were having to give up certain, you know, like home ec went away, and some other positions all went away. But you said programs, big part of that. That fixed costs were a big part of that. So you have fewer kids, and you're getting less money from the state because it's just per student.
But
when the high school was
so
built,
we almost have IEPs for every kid in the school. It
Well,
feels that way.
feels that way.
Money for an IEP.
Exactly, and you could pay for those. You get one teacher and 5 paraprofessionals in a class of 15 kids. It's insane.
The IEP that I went through last year had to have cost $30,000. And I don't understand that. One of my children, same thing, 8 years ago. I sat down with the teacher, we discussed how to come at it a different way, they came at it a different way. We didn't need, and again, none of that existed then. But what I just went through with this one, to me, that's where you see costs in schools.
Yeah.
Yeah, IB's 504s plans.
But certainly when the high school was built, it was built for 12, the core was built for 1,200 students.
was,
The
yeah.
classrooms were built for 800. So there was space for more. And, you know, pretty soon we'll have grades preschool through 12 in there.
Hence the
I have to
Middle
agree
school's
with that
there.
guy that I mean, personally, I don't see the correlation in more kids, higher tax rate because of the kid.
Right. It's not. Services. Correct.
I should just be quiet,
Please don't.
but I can't. It is very difficult for a school to properly plan for the number of special ed kids that can become their responsibility.
Right.
And it is their responsibility. Yeah. That it becomes the responsibility of the district as soon as the student moves into the district. And that can be someone who doesn't even go to the school, but is sent to another facility,
Yeah.
and the
Out
school
of
is
district, yeah.
required to cover that cost.
Yes, you're absolutely correct.
That's
So there are likely more programs now than there were 20 years ago. Except my wife has been a teacher for 35 years and started as a special ed teacher. And the element that exists and the level that has existed has been fairly steady for that entire 35 years. And it is the biggest driver of this school budget. It's not the retirement plan for the teachers. It's not, it is that requirement, and it's the proper requirement. Children need to be taught, but it is very expensive.
You want the solution? When they came out with universal health care, every child is required to have a health care plan, okay? Why is the town absorbing the cost when you can apply it to the child's health care?
I've been saying that for 20 years.
Okay, they're doing it on a minimal basis when you have now psychologists in school systems, and that psychologist is billed through the child's health care instead of the school budget. The transportation can be covered, the IEP can be covered, the therapist can be covered, the psychologist can be covered, the physical therapy can be covered. All that can be billed to, as long as it's coded, to the child's health care.
And we're not doing it.
Nope. You know why? Because the insurance company, well, who's going to absorb that cost now? The federal government.
We may be getting.
Oh, well, we're not gonna get
I was gonna say, we
anywhere.
may be
Yeah,
getting too
we're
far off the
getting too far
subject.
away. But at least,
That's not a tonight problem.
but at least what we've done tonight is we. Got a problem, Adam? So at least what we've done tonight is at least understand a few facts that increasing students don't necessarily increase cost just because they come in, and density decreases costs rather than increases.
I think our job is to facilitate bringing businesses that generate tax dollars. I'm not saying pillage and plunder our town, that's not what I want, but I do want to see some more industrial, some more commerce
Yeah.
that generates tax revenue. I think that's the best way, and jobs.
Because the problem is they do jobs, but there's nobody here
But
that has the housing to live in.
To get
for
them
the
to come,
jobs.
you need a workforce.
Yeah.
And to have a workforce, you need a place for
housing.
them to live. And I think that right now, given the crisis in New Hampshire for housing, that should be our priority. And I'm actually stunned by the fact that in our workforce housing ordinance, 1087, we limit the workforce housing to a maximum of 50% of the units in a multi-unit development. And there's absolutely no reason for that. And
There's a reason for it, if a developer wants to make some money.
but the
Well, no,
economics is up to the developer.
We limit it to 50%. The developer could do
To
more
zero.
or less.
But
He
you're limited
wants to
to
make money, he can do, market
way to
rate.
raise the rates.
No, he just does market rate housing and he charges what he wants.
Well, it's like
for
Chimberg's
units.
project was gonna have 10% affordable.
Yeah,
He's gonna have
and but the other one, the big one we had, the roof height issue, they wanted zero because they didn't want to get into the affordable housing. And because we say there's a maximum of 50%, not a minimum,
Right, we
There was
don't actually require
any
Correct.
workforce housing.
in an ordinance that allows a higher density for workforce housing.
Exactly, and, the statement in that ordinance that says this is to meet the requirements.
Because it was the only way we thought it would get passed.
Yeah, exactly, but it says to meet the requirements of New Hampshire, RSA such and such, and it really doesn't. If you put an ordinance in that allows you zero workforce housing, then it's not meeting the intent of the statute that it's supposed to meet the intent of.
Okay, well, let's move on to our zoning articles, because I think all of us want to be out of here by 8 o'clock. The first one, of course, is the home occupation. As we know, state law has changed and now requires childcare to have private homes in which more than 6 preschool-age children and 3 part-time school-age children, not counting the children residing in the home, are provided care. So we need to replace the current language with that to match state law. Do we have any?
Yeah, I would make a comment. We do need to add, where it says not counting children residing in the home, it should be not counting the children over 9 years of age. If you have looked up RSA 170, it actually has that requirement in there that 10 years old, you can exclude, the 6 preschool children and the 3 part-time school-age children include the kids relatives of the caregiver and the foster children residing in that house, so that, and it says, except for children 10 years of age or older. So, and that's, as I said, 170, RSA 170.
So you'd like to make an amendment
So
to that?
amendment is to add between the words children and residing is over 9 years of age.
Okay. Is everyone
In other
comfortable with
words,
that?
I think it's good, and we can discuss the zones later. It only applies to zones that permit residences.
Right. Every residential zone in town has to require, it has to allow for this.
Exactly.
Correct.
So RRSFR.
So I'm not sure where you want that language, Peter.
Okay, so let me read it to you. G6, private homes in which more than 6 preschool, it prohibits private homes in which more than 6 preschool-aged children and 3 part-time school-aged children, not counting the children over 9 years of age residing in the home, are provided care. And you do count the children under 10 who live in the home in that 6 and 3.
Everybody okay with that?
And I can send you the link to that, but it's,
Okay.
it's 170E:2, it's in the definition sections, and it says, for example, it's the same in all these family daycare home and family group daycare home, but it says, the 6 children shall include any foster children residing in the home and all children who are related to the caregiver, except children who are 10 years of age or older. And then it says, in addition to the 6 children, up to 3 children attending full-day school program may also be cared for up to 5 hours per day. We don't have to get into the...
Yeah, that's all regulated by them.
That HE 4000 or what, HEC 4000 compliance would be required for them if they're going to operate a daycare facility of any kind. So the number, it's like 13 hours is maximum for the full-timers and 5 hours for the other ones.
But those regulations may change, so.
Yeah,
we don't want to get
so we
that
don't want
involved.
to, we could just say, I don't think we have to actually spell out the fact that it has to be in accordance with state regulations. That's part of the state regulation, so.
So if we just have it, if we have a motion to move G.6, private homes in which more than 6 preschool-aged children and 3 part-time school-aged children, not counting the children over 9 years of age residing in the home, are provided care.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, move that to public hearing. Oh, yeah.
No, we have to have a public hearing.
No, this is just move it to public
This
hearing.
is to move it to public hearing.
Yeah. I did note that in the commercial districts, C1, it is allowed in C2. Daycare is allowed in C2. We can require a site plan review because it's commercial activity in a commercial zone. But it's C1, it's not listed as a permitted use in C1, but accessory uses aren't addressed in C3. It's not listed in C3, but could fall under the accessory uses for residents.
But we're only dealing with residential uses here with the new state law.
Right, the state law only deals with, but I just thought I'd mention the fact that
We do allow it in
we
other
are
places.
prohibited, if you live in a house in C1, you wouldn't be allowed to have a daycare center.
Okay.
And we just had that come up recently. They came in as a commercial activity, so we went to the site plan review.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not listed as a permitted use. No, that was in C2, and it was a permitted use. That was why.
Okay.
So,
All those in favor of moving it to public hearing?
right.
All right. Next one, parking standards. As we know, the state law has changed. So we have, state law requires that you cannot have more than 1.5 residential parking spaces per unit for studio and 1-bedroom apartments under 1,000 square feet that meet the requirements for workforce housing. The new law also states that local regulations cannot require more than 1.5 residential parking spaces per unit for multifamily developments of more than 10 units. The first requirement doesn't have much impact on our parking regulations, found at the site plan review at section 904, because we don't have a requirement about square footage. We could amend the table on 904-16 by changing both the studio and one-bedroom parking requirements from 1.5 to the present 2. The accessory dwelling unit number can be changed from 2 to 1.5 as well. I think you meant both of them go from 2 to 1.5, right?
Yes.
Okay, you just had it backwards there. For multifamily, we currently require 4 parking spaces per dwelling unit. We would need to change that to 1.5 units as well.
Now, this, I mean, it isn't a huge issue for the studio and one-bedrooms.
And by the way, those only apply to the studio one-bedrooms that are under 1,000 feet and
Exactly.
and qualify under the workforce housing ordinance, which is, the statute. So very, very few would be involved in that. But
There would be,
but I think
my first statement holds that if we didn't do anything, I don't see us getting sued for it, but at some point, developers are going to be cognizant of the fact that most of the towns in the state have changed their requirements to 1.5 parking spaces per unit, and it may be good for us to sheeple. It doesn't really impact us that much. Where this could impact us is if we make some other changes to our housing policy, because there's no reason to change it in the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, because it doesn't make any difference. If it's 1.5, you have to round up, because you can't have half a parking space anyway, and that gets you to 2, and that's what our standard is.
however, if the state, which is what they had proposed this last session,
Right.
talked about putting 2 ADUs in a house, then you'd have, you could only require 3 parking
It would
spaces
end up being 3 spaces instead of
instead of 4, yeah. So I think,
But ADU doesn't come under affordable housing because it's...
no, that's, yeah. That's under accessory dwelling unit. We have 2 per dwelling unit. And, we can talk about this under the alternative parking provisions.
But this is also a regulation,
Yes.
so it does not go to...
Yeah, this doesn't go to,
It
It does not go to
town
ballot.
meeting.
right.
It does not go to town. Right, if we made a change to the accessory dwelling unit, it would, because that's a zoning ordinance.
Okay,
But I'm proposing that we don't do that.
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
5 years ago, this was called smart growth, okay? And the smart growth, and why they refer to it as smart growth is, I'm gonna let you have 1.5, which means you're not gonna buy a car. Yeah, this makes perfect sense in a city that has public transportation.
Right.
Okay? But this makes no sense in a town like Kingston. None. 0.
But
And I know it's a state law. I like your idea of not changing a thing, because the reality to it is, you put an ADU on, you have 2 people. Are they having 1 car or 2 cars? Where's the second car going? And if we can't mandate it, where is it going? Okay? And if you do the workforce housing and you have 10 units, and they've reduced this to 0.7 in the federal regulation. Okay, 0.7 per unit.
I know.
And that's where we're headed with this.
The multifamily one is a burr under my saddle. We require a lot.
Have you seen the apartment buildings with cars lying down the street?
Yeah.
Okay, because that's the reality of what you're going to have. Because
So,
But nonetheless, we're dealing with
A state law.
a state law, and if you want to try to buck it, maybe you can hire the attorney, but it's quite frankly a whole lot easier to comply and let the developer decide if he thinks he's not going to be able to sell housing units that don't have at least two parking
perspective
measures.
of whether you can sell it. My perspective is, where are you putting the cars? Where are you going to put the cars?
you can't put them on the street because of snowstorms.
That's where they're going.
Well,
I mean, I completely understand the concern here, because it is a challenge for me to believe that if we do a 26-unit multifamily development, and we allow them only to have 1.5 parking spaces for each unit.
They're gonna have 4 cars a unit.
If it's a 3-bedroom unit, then there are gonna be at least 2 cars with every unit.
At least.
And we're working at a deficit. It freaks me out, but it is the state law. But it freaks me out.
and
They do the math when they pass these?
Well,
They don't want you to own a car.
this is
That
because,
is the only reason this exists.
and they also think you're gonna live in the city, because that's where most of the affordable housing is going, is in places that have some sort of public transportation.
About small.
But our cities don't really have
but the
public
multi-
transportation, except for Manchester.
but the
don't really have-
multi-unit, the one Glenn was talking about, the multi-unit doesn't apply to affordable housing.
Right.
Workforce housing. It
Right.
applies to, you know, if you put luxury houses. I mean, you can put a King's Landing, which are really nice houses, it's a higher density, but we only required 3 per dwelling unit, and they're talking about making that 1.5. You know, it's just not, it's not practical, and you know, it'd be great if everything was in walking distance. You know,
Yep.
Town used to have the grocery
it's
store.
not.
Well, we're talking about expanding, later, we're talking about expanding the elderly district to areas that aren't close to the
Yeah,
center.
right, well, I know, that's,
So we're telling them they need to have houses, cars. In New Hampshire, you still need a car.
Yeah,
And I don't know of any, I shudder to think that Barbara and I will be comfortable only having 1 car, ever.
that day will come.
Even when we're 90, we both are too independent, and I don't get it. I don't get it, and we don't have any alternatives in this part of the state.
We had 4 cars and there were 2 drivers. Summer and winter.
we have 3, 2 drivers. So, all right, let's bring this sort of around to where we're going.
Yep.
We have to do.
It's something, we have to have
It's a-
1.5
it's a
for
state law.
affordable. I mean,
It's a state law, but in our case, it's a state law that's predicated in our regulation scheme.
correct.
A lot of towns put their parking in their zoning. Right. We don't do that.
So we can waive it if necessary.
Well, I put all this on paper because it's a law. But we also have in our ordinance an alternate parking section that says if you can show us alternate parking for your development that varies from our standards, and we agree with you, you don't even need a waiver. It's part of our regulation.
do we have that?
We do, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I didn't see that, because that was the second part of the state law, is that we have to provide alternative parking. We don't have to approve it, we can get third-party review, but if they can demonstrate.
Section 11 on page 90423 is alternate parking standards. And it's to encourage
26,
better
okay.
overall site design, improve management efficiency. So it's on 904-23 in my book.
Okay, access management, okay, recording, bonding, on the page or on the,
Yeah, 904-23 is the page. It's section 11 under,
oh, okay, so that's on 904-12, engineering cost? No.
I mean, at what point does the state make all that? Is what I'm afraid of.
in what?
At what point does the state make all our rules? We become become,
That's scary.
That is
and
scary.
that's where we're headed.
Because every community is different, and one of the things that they're talking about right now in Concord, as they're doing their legislation for this next year, is every community doesn't have to have the same rules. And that one of the things that they talked about, even in the denser housing, was that communities are different. And they
Oh,
should be
here,
allowed to have their differences.
I hope they push forward with that, because I see where it's going, because it's already happening elsewhere.
Yeah.
And elsewhere, the federal government will give you $10,000, your town, you get $10,000 a unit to put 0.7 parking in.
Well, we're remarkably a state that has live free or die on our license plate, but we're not a home rule state. So we're overlorded by Concord.
So I think at this point, maybe we should just change the 1.5 for exactly what the state says, workforce housing, which we have very
We don't
limited
have it
amount
on
of,
the
we
chart,
don't really
but-
have on, for units, studio and one-bedroom units under 1,000 feet. That would comply, the rest we don't have to comply with.
That works for now.
And,
And I can expand this table to say, to add in the 1,000 square foot requirement and the reference to the RSA.
RSA,
Okay,
yeah.
Correct.
so why don't you do that, and we can vote on it.
Well, if you.
We don't need a public, we do need a public
You
hearing.
would have to do a public,
So-
but if you would vote to go forward with
Yep.
that, with those amendments, I'll make those amendments for the public hearing.
Okay.
do we want to deal with the over 26 unit multifamily?
That's
We need to get to
next.
that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's not in this one. I
Oh,
mean, this
okay.
is just parking.
Right, that's the,
Stick with parking.
this is, we're talking about the parking, that's the one,
I move that
One.
we accommodate the ones that add the 1,000 square foot.
I'll make
and
those
the
changes to those
affordable
two
housing.
sections, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll second that.
okay. All those in favor of moving that to public hearing?
All right.
Perfect. All right. The next one is the number of dwelling units. In C1 only, add number of dwelling units. A multifamily structure shall not have more than 24 dwelling units. When a multifamily development is a mixture of housing types, duplex units may also be
Wait a
used
second, we
as...
didn't do the second part of this, the parking requirements.
What was that?
The multi-unit, the multifamily currently require 4 parking spaces, and we would
Yeah.
need to change this to 1.5 units as well. And so the multifamily is not workforce housing.
Right.
Well, we said we'd change the chart to include the under 1,000 for studio and one bedroom under 1,000 square feet that also comply with the workforce housing,
It will be 1.5.
1.5. The other,
Otherwise, it stays.
right, but the other thing is the multifamily
We require 4 parking
requires-
spaces per unit.
we would require 4 parking spaces. They're saying that multifamily is limited to 1.5. The state law does.
Correct.
Yes. So do we want to change that in our chart? We didn't vote on it.
I say we don't.
I say we don't.
I say we
I say we don't, because if they challenge us, we
We can
can
waive it.
refer to our alternate parking
Oh, I see,
standard
because,
section.
I see what you're getting at, because it's not,
And say,
it's
look,
not a
if you
regular,
can show us that
or an ordinance.
1.5 is actually realistic on this development,
yeah.
we have the power to approve that.
We did that at the leasing place.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
No, that's
Because
fine.
our state law says you have to allow alternate parking plans. We already do.
Okay,
If we keep our standard at 4 and that freaks them out, and they come to me and they say, the state says 1.5.
okay, I get what you're saying.
Then I tell them, you show us a plan that's 1.5, and if we agree with that, then we're all happy.
Yeah.
But if we still look at that design, and we see 1.5 parking spaces and no visitor parking or no allowance for more parking anywhere, I think we have the right to say no.
Yeah, and they were talking in the briefing about how that was literally, starting point was 1.5, but if they can show that, 0.9 spaces would be, or 0.7 would work.
Yeah, they could go with those.
Okay,
They can go, okay,
all right,
move on.
moving on. Amend Article 108, Commercial Zone C1 by adding to the following. Number of dwelling units. A multifamily structure shall not have more than 24 dwelling units.
That exists right now.
That exists.
That exists.
Add to that, when a multifamily development is a mixture of housing types, duplex units may also be used as multifamily structures.
One multifamily structure per duplex?
Yes. What our law says right now, what our ordinance says right now, under the definition of multifamily, in the definition section, is that multifamily units are greater than 2 units, so a duplex doesn't qualify. But we saw a design for a development that wanted to incorporate a number of different housing types, one of which was duplexes, and we had to tell them they couldn't do that without a zoning amendment, without a variance, without a variance. This would allow them to come with us because that had a number of multifamily structures with like 30 units in them.
Right.
And also they wanted to do a campus feel with duplexes, and they couldn't do it. And
The number of bedrooms doesn't change, so.
that seems,
It seems reasonable. I think what happened is, as you pointed out, the state law was what drove the over 2, because they require 3 as the minimum for multifamily, and except in workforce housing, it's minimum of 5.
it is
And
number 5.
so, by definition, but
we can
set our own minimum.
We can set our own standard, and we're saying, we understand multifamily, for our own definition, is more than 3. But we're saying this is going to happen in a development that has a mixture of housing types. So why forego duplexes if it's also on a campus site that has a couple of apartment complexes?
Or a couple of single-family homes.
Exactly. Why are
Yeah,
we
except that
being
it wouldn't
so-
have a single-family home.
Why are we being so narrow?
It's prohibited under that ordinance that, so.
So this would have
and that's
taken
C2.
that away.
Yeah. So anyway, does anyone agree that that should go to
Yeah, I think that's good.
public hearing?
I think that would
Okay, motion?
make things easier.
I'll make a motion to move the
Language.
Amendment Article 108, Commercial Zone C1, with Glenn's additions to warrant article.
Okay. Second?
Second it?
All those in favor?
Aye.
So that's going to
Perfect.
public hearing.
And the last one is
Oh,
age
public
restricted
hearing, I
housing.
said warrant article, sorry.
Yeah.
That, her motion should not say warrant article. It should say that it's been moved to
Public
public.
hearing.
Hearing.
Okay. Age-restricted housing is presently allowed in a portion of R34 zoning district and as an overlay in the R33 zoning district as an overlay. This wording is found in Article can be expanded to include all areas in town that are zoned rural residential.
Okay, here, I am just throwing this out. We, at an earlier point in time, determined that we wanted to have age-restricted housing close to the center of town because that's where our services are. And so we thought that it would be more convenient for older residents to be close to the library and close to the general store we used to have. And so we put it in those two, on those 2 tax maps. We have an age-restricted development way the hell down on Ash Road. Is that off Newton?
Ash Drive,
Is
yeah.
that off Newton Junction or New Boston?
New Boston.
near my house.
We also have one at Granite
Boston.
Fields.
So that, we have one way down there, and then we have the ones on Scotland Road, which are a little bit more removed than those other 2. We presently told a developer he couldn't do age-restricted housing on the golf course.
Well, you couldn't get the benefits, the density benefits of
Right.
age-restricted housing. Not that he couldn't do it.
He
would just
no,
have to-
that he couldn't do age-restricted housing there,
Well, no, he could,
because
He-
we allow it now only in those.
right, what I'm saying is he could still build houses
But not the density.
but not get the density advantage and restrict them
Correct.
to sales to only people who are age 60 and over. He just wouldn't get the density benefit.
That is absolutely true.
So he was given that option, because I remember that
I mean,
meeting.
when posed with that, they typically would say,
I think that
then I'm just
we
gonna
can't do it.
pass this for everyone, because why restrict them?
Yeah.
Yes, so this would mean they could go in about 3/4 of the town, because the rural residential zone is about 75% of the town. It's a big expansion.
But you still, but
Well,
you
I
still
guess
need a large parcel of land to do that, correct?
Yeah, generally you.
And there aren't many large parcels of land left in town that aren't in conservation? Should we take a look and see how many?
Why are we doing this? Just to accommodate that one individual that had the, I don't think that's right. That would have been spot zoning had we
Yes.
done that. And
Correct.
we would not, and I know the select board was not in favor of that, they would not support
I would agree
spot
with
zoning.
that.
So I'm not even sure I want to touch this.
I mean, it gets us further away from, certainly further away about workforce housing.
Exactly.
And-
I was going to
Or
just
just
bring that up.
regular housing.
I
And if we're
think,
talking about tax implications, we've talked about
Exactly.
the higher impact sits there. It's not on workforce housing.
it's ambulance calls to pick people up off the floor. The,
And we can't even park golf carts because we only have 1.5 spaces.
That's right.
No, the half spot is for the golf cart.
The half spot is what. Now it all makes sense. Now it all makes sense.
yeah, we just got finished pointing out that the tax advantages to the cost of the town of elderly housing
Yeah.
is not something that really encourage. Obviously, in the state of New Hampshire, we're gonna need a lot of housing for
Yeah.
those of us who,
For everybody.
but
Yeah.
everybody.
Especially since there's no new
But
families coming in.
we shouldn't be encouraging, restrictive housing. And I think we should be, increase the amount of maybe, the density requirements should go to everybody, including the, workforce. Not-
Yeah. Do we want to change density requirements?
So just
No, but I
strike a
mean
big
density
old
requirements for
line.
any. What'd you say, Glenn?
I said just strike a big old line through this.
Yeah. I think-
Okay, perfect. All right, so we have 3 going to public hearing. So our,
So that means only 3 zoning changes?
No, 2, because we're not doing the parking
right,
changes.
there's only 2 zoning changes so far.
Good job.
But there are a couple more things. Pedro
Yeah,
is working very closely with Glenn and the selectmen to develop some way to take seasonal dwellings to year-round, to have requirements. And so they're working on that. That would have to come through us, should that happen.
Yeah, we haven't actually started on that yet.
And it may
but-
not happen this year.
well, there
Well,
is,
it might, once we get through the budget. I mean, I expect that I do expect that to
Okay.
start soon.
we do have an ordinance that requires a seasonal conversion, that has to, you have to get an approved septic system, if you do a seasonal conversion. Most places, people just start living them year-round.
We are finding so many problems with seasonal, whether it be
Oh, I know.
campsites or homes, or people say, well, I've lived there year-round for the last 30 years. I mean, it's a mess.
Oh, I understand, but,
Yes.
but you're basically working on changing that ordinance as opposed to give it some enforceability.
Transition from what
Not creating a
should have.
brand new, yeah.
Right, should have been stayed seasonal, that's now year-round. So how do we make it family safe?
Right, we want there to be.
That's the
We
issue.
want there to be a direction for accomplishing that,
Yes.
which the present doesn't cover all the issues that actually are involved.
Yeah. Okay, so that's number 1. There's 2 other things that we might want to think about. One is, there's a 60-foot building separation for age-restricted housing, and Pedro thinks that is,
No, it
Too much?
just came up that
It's random.
do you still want that?
do we still want that, or could it be less, right?
Because many of the developments have less.
Have less.
Yeah, they already have less, so they're not meeting that, so, yeah, so it says 60 feet, but many of them don't have that, they're more like 40 feet. So do we want to change that so it's,
What is the fire department comfortable with?
Well,
they said 25.
yeah, I would think as long as the density requirements are being met, separation may be
Then,
20.
yeah, I mean, I prefer that within a development, if what we're worried about is density, then having it meet fire, safety life codes,
And not have a distance?
why are we expanding it?
No, he's talking about reducing it, it's 60.
No, I mean, why did we expand it? Why did we make it apparently more than twice as big as it needed to be?
And then not
We don't know.
require
And then
that
not-
on any of the plans.
So, what do we want to do with that? Do you want to just change that number
Yeah,
to?
40, 20, well, like,
25?
in a regular district, you can't build within 20 feet, that would
Of
mean
your lot
40 feet.
line.
Yeah, that would mean maybe 40 feet separation between houses.
Yep.
Why would you have 60 feet in a higher
Right.
density?
Doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any
That doesn't
sense.
make sense at all. It's
But is
contra-
40 also gonna be a setup? Because I'm picturing some of the,
placements, if they angle placements. and you have
yeah,
corners
I'm
and-
thinking it's probably less than 40 in some places
Oh,
too.
it
Does
is.
it make sense to ask Pedro what,
I think we've been there, so there was, I mean,
Okay.
fire says 25.
Then let's do 25.
Okay, so if you want to make that change, Glenn, and
Yes.
we would like to also bring that change to public hearing?
Yes.
Okay,
that just?
Going forward, I would guess.
that's the higher density developments. It's under age restricted housing.
Yeah,
where
yeah,
it's
it would
less.
be 60.
Where's 40 at? Kings Landing's 40?
Oh,
Yeah,
because we already
25
have
seems a
it,
little
40 feet
close.
of regular developments. 20 foot.
Why wouldn't we drop that to 25 for everybody else?
Because there's an expectation that you, there's that 20-foot buffer between your property line and any building.
And if it's talking about other developments with maybe the
And- and there you're
multi-units
talking-
in a building, then maybe it should be like 30 feet or 40 feet, just to give them a little bit of extra room. Just saying.
A few minutes ago, we were talking about the developer coming in and putting in houses and trying to get things affordable.
Okay,
But this,
25?
we're not talking about changing the density though, so. You're talking,
This is placement.
Placement, it's not density.
exactly.
Because the density is established, and then they get to place it
Right,
on
but-
the site, and that's where this separation number.
Right, so,
How about minimum?
Yeah, that works.
You have to have at least 25
feet,
plus.
and that would just be in those higher density zones.
Right, it says, right now it says minimum
Yeah.
space of 60, so we change it to minimum 25. Okay,
And if there's life safety issues, they would be
Addressed.
addressed accordingly. And it has to be approved by the fire chief or his designee.
Nice developments where they're close.
they are.
You know, people don't mind.
No? There's
Especially
nice
if there's
ones
good
in-
insulation, yeah.
Nice ones in Newcastle. But the newer developments like by Wentworth by the Sea, that are really close.
Yeah.
All right, so do we have a motion to bring that to second?
Second, okay, second.
We established that it was gonna be 25 feet.
Yes.
25 feet minimum.
Minimum.
25 feet.
And then roof height requirements.
Ah, there you go.
That was the last one we were going to talk about, where we had said that the roofs have to be a certain height unless the space is not occupied,
Right,
and then it can be a little higher,
and that is
for
something
things
that.
like cupolas.
Right, since it's really a life safety issue, it's odd that we have different requirements in different zones. And even in
does vary.
C2, we've got a roof height requirement of 40 feet,
40, it goes
and
to
then,
35.
but 20 feet for, or sorry, 30 feet for the multifamily housing in C2. So even within one zone, we have two different heights. And yeah, I think that was why that got approved, was that the fire department there was no correlation between the
So
the reason for the ordinance and the,
what should we make it?
well, the fire department said that they were comfortable with anything up to 40, as long as over 35 wasn't occupied. So you're talking about a 3-story, could be, but, you know, like an attic or something, the last 10 feet would be unoccupied.
So the height in single family is 30
30.
right now.
And in C2, it's
Yeah,
40,
In one of
Yep.
the commercial zones, it's 35.
35, and we have 40.
So we get 3 different sizes?
Yeah,
We do have different heights.
But they said their trucks now are capable
doing more.
of going up to that higher. The one problem was that the development that we were talking about earlier wanted 55 feet on their multi-units.
Yeah.
And it was really kind of stretching it.
Yeah, building height in
Fire
C3 is
department
45.
45, and C3, yeah.
C3 is 45.
Right, okay. So there's another number. So we got 30, 35, 40, 45.
We should be consistent.
We should. If it's based on fire safety, we should.
We should ask the fire department what.
Yeah,
I think we have a few times.
did
we have,
advertise.
yes.
Did anybody write that down?
Yeah.
Yeah, he said 45, I think.
I think you said 35, and then the rest of it not finished.
Right.
35, yeah.
So 35 for the height.
occupied,
And then anything unoccupied could
Above
go to
there.
45.
yeah.
Up to 40, would you really have 10 feet of unoccupied space, though? You could, yeah.
Yeah, that's not uncommon.
Okay.
Like sometimes the roof lines come up and you've got clustery windows all the way across.
Is that building code Glenn?
I don't think so.
I think there is a statement in the building code as well.
Should we verify that then?
Oh, yeah, let's see.
Yeah, before I will go through every ordinance and find out what the height is. I'll do a chart. So maybe I'll do that for the public hearing this month.
Okay.
Just for board business that meeting,
Okay.
okay?
And then we'll put that public hearing. So we have a choice. We have 3 things on the agenda at our next meeting. We could do a public hearing on all these zoning articles for the first meeting in November, which would normally be a work session meeting, but we could use it.
Not November.
No, the first meeting in November.
November is
Oh, wait, no,
the
it's
election.
Tuesday, it's gonna be.
That's right, it's election day.
It's election.
Okay, I guess we're
A couple
next
of us are
meeting.
working. I don't know.
Are we meeting November 5th then?
No,
No. 'Cause
It's not here, voting's not here.
no,
anyway, so-
but we're not meeting, we're meeting on the 17th.
All right.
So, okay, so let's do it this month, and since we're pretty much in agreement of it, I don't think we're gonna have an awful lot of discussion.
I don't think so.
Let's just do it. Okay,
Well, the building was 300 series.
so we'll do that, and then bring that, discussion for that, and then we'll bring that last one to the public hearing on the 17th of November.
When would I have to virtually post it? When would I have to virtually post it for that? Our meeting's the 15th.
In 2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, and it has to go to the paper.
Like your time?
It does have to be, zoning amendments have to be in the paper.
Yeah. Zoning amendment hearings.
So we
I would
can't,
say 6,
I'd have to
7,
do it this week, right?
I don't even know if we have time.
We can't make it then, so we'll have to do the second meeting in November.
Yeah.
I mean, the second public hearing night in November.
Time to get it all ready.
Okay. So we'll have all the zoning articles at the public meeting in November. Public hearing night in November. Anything else to,
I'm still gonna press, and this could end up being a petition warrant article instead, but the adding RV to the travel trailer ordinance, because right now you can park a RV and occupy it on your lot, but you can't park or occupy a travel trailer without a permit, and, you know, there's a maximum occupation time and all that kind of stuff. And our travel trailer ordinance specifically states it has to be marked by the manufacturer as a travel trailer. And all we have to do is add the words, and recreational vehicles, which, and the definition, which I took right off of Merriam-Webster's, a recreational vehicle, so a truck, van, or motorhome designed for use. Oh, got cut off, but what happened to that? Oh, here, as living quarters used for overnight recreational activities and travel. And as I said, I made a note, we asked Pedro about this, if it was part of the proposed changes that you'd come up with, because I know it had been recommended, especially given the light of the issues we have fairly recently about people
Because
occupying.
we don't have, we have travel
Recreational
trailer,
vehicles.
but we don't have RV, so they can just park an RV on a lot anywhere and occupy it.
They're doing that now anyway.
Right, but in theory, if you did it with a trailer, you could enforce that. Right now, the selectmen cannot enforce if they do with a RV. And you really shouldn't be having people living in RVs as an ADU or whatever else, because it doesn't meet the requirements. So, you know, if you're gonna say you can't have do this with travel trailers, you should say RVs.
And what's the definition of a travel trailer?
A travel trailer, we've got a lengthy one in there already.
In here?
We have a definition.
It's quite lengthy, about the size. It's size and weight and length,
Travel trailer.
with 8 feet but width and all, you know. What they wanted to try to do is differentiate a travel trailer from a mobile home. But they didn't need to be that specific. They could reword the travel trailer and RV definitions to make the travel trailer
So we should actually put a definition for recreational
vehicle in
the
there
definition
as number
section as well.
23 and renumber the other ones, yeah. So,
Okay,
and I can.
there we go.
Yeah. No, can't remember the numbers.
Yeah, it would be a new number 23.
23, you remember the other ones.
Okay. Well, bring the words for that to the next meeting too, and we'll take a look at it.
Okay.
Okay?
And the other one you had mentioned about, when we had the hearing about, and this is not a zoning change, so it's not anything the planning board would propose, but the class 6, the changing class 6 of status of back road to a class A trail. And are you interested in seeing in either proposing
I would not be proposing that, no.
okay, so if somebody wanted to do it, that would be a citizen's petition.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because doing that is going to restrict the people that own larger parcels of land there.
It's opening a Pandora's box. I would not go there.
No. It's caused enough trouble with the one they did with Rockrimmon Road, and the people that didn't have access to their housing lots there. That
Yeah, but
bought.
they sold housing lots before that became a Class A trail. And in this case, there aren't any housing lots there.
Yeah, but there's large tracts of land that could become that are not, so I wouldn't go there.
Can I just bring up one thing to get input from folks? So the RPC sent a survey out looking for, in our case, municipalities to weigh in on any areas of municipal and or regional planning you feel would benefit from legislative action.
There is nothing that would benefit from legislative action.
So if that's the feedback we would like to give, that is what I will submit, but I just wanted to throw it out. They've got a checklist, so it's agriculture or agritourism, boards and commissions, economic development, energy, environment, housing, land use, transportation, or other. So if none of those things we think would benefit from legislative action, we can.
There's
Less
already
government is
There's
better,
already
really.
25 bills that have already been submitted that deal at least with some of those things.
Yeah, that's,
Okay.
I would not like to be run by the state.
I'm getting tired of it.
And I mean,
Yeah.
even the water.
Okay,
just to give you an update on the project to widen 125 from Agway up to Newton Junction Hunt Road. It's celebrating its 37th year on the 10-year plan. seriously. And just this last meeting, we got an update on the status of these projects. It's the last project on the 10-year plan to be scheduled for funding. The status is actually listed is on shelf, which means that all the engineering and stuff has been completed. They're just waiting to, put it out to bid. It's not on this funding schedule until the 26, 27 fiscal years, which starts in the late fall of 25. So the earliest it could start would be a little over a year from now. But it's not likely even to go out to bid until then. So don't worry about roadblocks for the next year.
I mean, the bottlenecks are confusing me on 125 lately.
Yeah,
2 lanes, 4 lanes, 2 lanes, 4 lanes, 2 lanes, 4 lanes, 2 lanes, 4
crazy.
lanes. I don't want 4, but
Well, that's going to be 3. But one other thing that does not affect any of our zoning, but might be of interest to you, is in New Hampshire, if you had waterfront property, and the waterfront property was within 200 feet of a great lake or pond, which would be anything over 10 acres, which is most of ours here in town, then if you sold the property, you had to have a site assessment done.
Since 2009, by the way.
Yep. So
Historical.
you had to have a site assessment done, which would mean that an engineer would go out and make certain that should the septic system fail, another one could be put on the property. That law has gone away completely. It has been replaced with a law that says if the septic system is within 250 feet of the water, then you have to have, if it's older, then you have to have the septic system inspected. To make sure it's working properly and that everything's fine. If there are no septic plans available or it's older than 1989, then they actually have to do digging in the ground to make certain that the septic system is above, the leach field is above the high water table, 4 feet above the high water table. So it's getting a little bit more complicated. It's getting better in a way to protect the water in our lakes. Septic system failures result in 11% of the water quality issues with lakes and ponds. The highest percentage is 7% or something like that, that is caused by runoff from, from the sources around the lake, from the land around the lake. It's runoff. That's the biggest thing. Septic's only 11%, but still they're doing their best to try to figure out a way. And that's if the property's transferred. It doesn't matter if it's sold. If it goes from one family member to another family member, it still has to be done. So just an FYI, a lot of towns with ponds are actually now Sunapee, Moultonborough, Tuftonboro, I think, and parts of Meredith require septic systems within 200 or 250 feet of the water to be inspected every 3 or 5 years. Mm-hmm. Every single one be inspected to make sure it hasn't failed. So things are changing on that. A lot of local ordinances are coming into effect that are stronger and more strict than those that are state. So anyway. Well, here it's a responsibility of the buyer. It's not the responsibility of the seller.
Oh, well, the one that went into effect in 2009 required that it was the responsibility of the seller, and that it had to be included as part of the P&S. So,
correct.
And so that would have been true when the Lone Tree, for example, property got sold, because boy, you look through the file there's a bunch of septic systems and not very high capacity. So
it's pretty disgusting from what I was told after the site visit the other day.
well, yeah.
There was no
There's-
health and safety issues.
Well, I don't think we should start talking
No,
about
not
that
about
since it's
that,
not
but-
on our agenda and
No,
the people aren't here.
No, but what I'm just saying is that we should be able to find records of septic systems, because when it comes up, when we have to find out about whether, that somebody's
If
got
they
a
come in with the
qualified
site
system.
plan, we can request that be brought with it as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else to come before the meeting? We're adjourned. Thank you, Adam.